I was aboard my LST with 220 of my Marines. I had my LVTs, the tractors in which we landed. And most people know these days that the first wave that went across the beach were Army LVTAs, armored, that is. They had a turret that was said to be reinforced. Well, you could knock the turret over a golf ball if you threw it real hard. But they had 75mm cannon on front, and their job was to kind of blast as we got up on the beach and take care of some targets there so we could get across the beach. Well, the intelligence that we received said that, and I remember it very, very clearly, said that the soil on Iwo Jima was kind of a volcanic ash, and it would not be an impediment to vehicles or troops. Now, how far wrong can you go with that? I asked her. In my own case, I was the first wave of LVTAs. The second wave was the next first troop wave was my company. My company exec and the CP were up there, and I was in the third troop wave with my couple of runners and radio communications and that kind of stuff. Well, when we landed on the beach, and I'm not quite sure that I understood what was said this morning about the berms, I landed on the Yellow 2, and right up off the beach was my first exposure to a sand berm formed by wind and waves, and they're shifting all the time on that shoreline. My own tractor, I read that and said, well, but these LVTs are different. They're made to handle all that. They got those tracks on there, and they just grind away. We were right on up to the objective. Not quite. I got halfway up the first berm, and the tractor spun around, stopped, unplanned. I said to the troops, bail out, and we all did. And we jumped over the side. If you watch carefully, the LVTs up there didn't have any cover on the top. We had no ramp to drop in the back. It was just a tractor that would float. So we jumped out, and when you jumped out into the sand, you couldn't dig a foxhole. No way. You just tried to find a bomb crater, closest one you could get into, which I did. And one of my sergeants was already in there with a badly shattered wound of his leg, and I thought surely he was going to lose it. And I won't tell you the whole story, but I will tell you that I said to Sergeant Ash, Leonard, I'm going to give you a shot of morphine, and I got to go. You see, it had been drilled into me as a young lieutenant, company commander, that you can't spend your time without any one Marine, no matter how bad off he is. You got 220 others that you got to worry about. So I said, Leonard, I'm going to give you my shot of morphine, and I got to go, but I'll try to get you a Coleman. He said, I've already used my morphine. I said, well, I'm not going to give you any more. You've got to wait a while. The Coleman will take care of that. So I turned and yelled, Coleman, and I heard a voice say, on the way. And with that, I left Leonard. Oh, I felt so bad, leaving Leonard in that condition in that hole. But I didn't have a choice, under my understanding, what I was supposed to be doing on that island. Now, in addition to the sand and the volcanic ash being a problem, and vehicle, it meant that we just didn't have time to move where we wanted to move. When you're moving your feet in coffee grounds, you just can't make any speed no matter how hard you try. You can't run, you got to walk, and every one, you lift your foot and it fills back up again. So I guess I'm overdoing it to tell you that the soil on Iwo Jima was a tremendous, difficult situation for us. I don't care what the intelligence people said, that ain't the way it worked out. Another point I want to comment on is that when we were aboard ship, and we were about halfway, I suppose, from Hawaii to Iwo Jima, General Howland Matt Smith had a press conference, and he told some reporters that he thought we could accomplish this task at Iwo in about 5 days. Well, those of us who were on the LSTs, we had a little every other day newspaper just off the mimeograph machine. And that was reported in that he had told the reporters it would take about 5 days. Well, we had just finished as a division. We had won Roy and the Moore. Really 8 holes, but we took care of that in about 3 days. So we had had our first taste of combat. We knew what it was to lose a buddy to a Japanese bullet or grenade or whatever. We knew what it was to see those Japanese be accurate with their sniper fire on the palm trees. So it was a valuable combat experience. But the fact of life is, we looked at this map of Iwo, and it says 8 square miles. Well, we had just finished Saipan and Tinian. Saipan was 22 kilometers long. So we said, 8 square miles? Sure, we do that in 5 days, no problem. Besides, we said, we got 73 days of bombing on this island. Can't be any problem left after that. And besides that, there's 96 hours before we landed, the Navy was really going to unload on Iwo Jima. Well, they did. But it didn't impress the Japanese. They simply didn't. As one historian said it so nicely, the problem with Iwo Jima is we were on it and the Japanese were in it. And that's exactly right. That's the cause of the difference in the problem. And I would remind you finally, and I'll take your questions, this is the only battle in United States history in which we, as the attackers, had greater casualties than did the enemy who we attacked. Is that a bad note in our history? No. It simply says that young Marines, you 17, 18, 19-year-old guys, you did your thing and were not discouraged by anything that was put in front of you. And through your personal grit and gut, we had a victory up there. So I would just tell you that now we look back and these young men, they're not old, but they are older. He's 18 and 19, as I told several of you. One of my Marines was 16 on Iwo. He got into the Marines at age 50 and he was a skilled, exquisite liar. And he got into the Corps at age 15 and on 16 he's fighting for his life. And fortunately he made it. But I was the old man in my company at 23, and I really didn't have much expectation at that time that I would get to be my 24th birthday. I really didn't. But in those days, as young as I was, as young as my troops were, we didn't think about things like that. We just thought, well, what we got to do today, get it done, and then we'll figure out what we're going to do tomorrow. So that's the way it went. All right, another question. Ooh. Can't believe you don't have questions for this group of experts. Yes, sir.
You know, what keeps the unit moving is bullets, water, and chow. And if somebody would talk about how they got resupplied with water, chow, bullets, or whatever you were carrying.
Want to talk about that from CB standpoint?
Oh, we had K rations.
Oh, yeah. We had K rations, and we had water. We carried 2 canteens ashore on our belts. And in addition to that, when we had water, it would be brought up to us by runners who went back and picked up a can or 2. And the problem really was that some of that water had been stored in those cans for 6 or 7 months back in the warehouse in Honolulu, with heat and humidity for a long time. And besides that, before they put water in them, some were true to were gas cans. So when you took a drink of water, you got refueled at the same time. That you enjoyed the water. But I'll tell you a personal story. The first 3 days on that island, I didn't eat a mouth. Not a single thing went in my mouth. I was fighting for my life, digging to stay alive, trying to get my troops under control and all that kind of stuff. So I didn't eat anything. The late on the 30th afternoon, I'm trying to shovel aside some dirt, soil, and get in the hole and have my head below the surface for nighttime. I uncovered a flat can which was obviously sardines, Japanese sardines, kind of rusty. Didn't have the key on it, but the old K-bar went to work and I opened that can of sardines. I ate those down almost in 2 gulps, and I've loved sardines ever since. I didn't like them before, but they saved my life on that 3rd day as far as I'm concerned. Let's have a question. Where is it? All right, Alice.
How did you have enough food for that entire battle?
How did we go?
How did you have enough food?
Oh, enough food? Oh, well, they don't have a lot of food. As a matter of fact, because you didn't have much appetite. Well, among other things, before we got to the rations you talked about, we had the old D bar, D ration. It was a chocolate bar about this long and about that big around, and it had 3,000 calories in it. And that was supposed to take care of us for a day. Well, I'll tell you, it had 3,000 calories, but let me tell you, it was the nicest sawdust I ever ate. It was tasted horrible. You got no flavor from it. It looked chocolate, but it wasn't. I think it was rotted wood simply held together with velvet glue. But that was our ration for several days. And then as we began to get some stuff coming ashore, and getting stuff ashore was a terribly difficult problem because all the wreckage on the beach. And the wreckage on the beach was not necessarily the result of the enemy or the coxswains who read it wrong. The surf came up and just turned those boats every way but loose before it let them hit the beach or some part of it. So the beach was a terrible logistic mess. And those of us who were up there not worried about it, food or water for the first several days, we didn't really care. But later on, we began to loosen up down there, and besides, food would come up to us, and we'd send runners back to pick up a box of rations or whatever. So it was not an easy task, but I don't think any of us starved, but we didn't care. Food, water, and that was kind of the least of our worries for most of us at that time. Another question? Yes, sir.
I'm a VMI cadet, and I actually commenced a commission in the U.S. Army. Sorry, it's not the Marine Corps. But from your experiences, what tips would you offer a future officer or just somebody who's going to protect the nation in the future?
What do I want young officers to do to protect us in the future?
Yes, sir.
Yeah. You forgive me if I turn now to 100% Marine.
That is it.
The difference between the Marines and others, and I don't disparage anybody else, I'm just saying, that we Marines are different. From the moment a young man puts his feet on those two yellow prints at Paris Island or San Diego, we tell him he's different. We demand that he understand very quickly that he's different. When he gets into training, he studies Marine Corps history, he studies Marine Corps heroes, he learns personal discipline from some very steely-eyed, very tough drill instructors. He learns that it's not me, it's me and my buddy. We learn teamwork from the very outset. And teamwork means you learn, one, to get the support and use support, and secondarily, from that support, you learn that you can depend on your fellow Marine. What does it take to drill that into you? Young officers who demand that their troops get properly trained and given proper leadership. And I'm just going to tell you that Tom Dan, the Marine Corps not very long ago, pointed out that the difference between Marines and others in many instances is attitude. When the chips are down, we don't care what the odds are. When the chips are down, we don't care what the odds are. We know we're there to win, and we're going to exercise every mental, physical capability we have to make it come true. And we do. And therefore, I contend forever that what we need for the young people to be as great as the second generation, as the greatest generation was, and others who follow. They're doing great today. It takes effective leadership and training. You put those two together, you can't lose.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
As far as backpacks and...
We carried backpacks. We carried an ammunition belt that had clips in there for our weapons. We had canteens hanging on it. We had a first aid packet that included a packet of morphine. And that was it. The troops today in Afghanistan carry a heavy, heavy load. But they're fighting in a different environment. We didn't worry about IEDs. Well, everything around us was an IED as far as we were concerned. But they were not like they were in Afghanistan, what they were doing. So we didn't have the privilege of wearing a backpack that now has a water supply in it. And you just bring a tube up and drink out of your backpack because you got water back there. We didn't have that kind of stuff. We didn't have any flak jackets. We just did it because, you know, this is what we got to do. So we didn't have any flak jackets. We didn't worry about that. And so the answer is, we didn't carry much weight. And I'm so glad about that, because 1 more pound of weight made your feet plunge deeper into the sand, and that was a bad idea. Okay, we got to pay one more And then we got to do something about it. He just handles them first.
I believe, sir, that you said that it was said that this battle in LtGen was going to be over 5 days. At what point did you realize it wasn't going to be over 5 days?
Oh, probably the second day. Yeah, I'm sorry about that, but it became very quickly apparent that we had taken a big bite into a very malicious kind of defense by the Japanese. And, you know, it was the first time General Kobayashi made the choice that he wasn't going to defend the beaches. He had figured out already that he can't stop us on the beach. That's why we only got sporadic rounds as we're going in. And if anybody says we didn't get in a round and run to the beach, they're absolutely wrong. We got artillery shells around our LBTs. I lost some LBTs in my company to artillery shells firing for that. But they didn't let a lot of them fire because he wanted to keep their places hidden so they didn't become targets of our naval gunfight ships. So he was doing it right. But the fact of life is, when we got up on that plateau, finally, it was about 30 minutes after landing, all hell turned loose because all those guns were zeroed in on the spots on the island, and we happened to be standing in them. So it was a tough kind of thing when they let it all go out. I would only conclude this question period by saying that these and I and other survivors who are here certainly are eager to talk to you if you have questions that have not been addressed here today. We know that we are standing here today, incredibly, we're standing here today, having been through the most vicious, bloodiest battle of World War II, and I'm still here today to talk about it. And I know that I'm amongst the world's luckiest men, and I'm proud of that, and I'm proud of my fellow survivors. I love them all. Thank you.
Thank you, everybody. Wasn't that wonderful? Let's give another round of applause.